So I just wanted to start with the slide because Brennan actually kind of started off your discussion with, what Zuckerberg did last fall and just turned our world sort of upside down. I think this title of this article does it pretty well. So 10 different definitions in the metaverse. Pick one you like. And so your guess is as good as ours. It's really, really convoluted right now. Blockchain and NFTs have just made it more confusing. And there's really not, outside of the existing VR, AR technologies, all that other stuff isn't adding too much. People are there's some good ideas, but there's nothing in practical use yet. Brennan, you did a great job of kind of giving a nice overview of what you've been doing at Cedars the last few years. I wanted to give Mark a chance to introduce himself and share what's going on at Mass General.
Thanks so much, Bob. And I just want to say thank you all for joining this conversation. And I'll just reiterate, Brennan, you did an incredible job this morning, so congratulations. It's a real pleasure being here. My name is Mark Zhang. I'm a palliative care physician by training and also a clinical informaticist. And I also am the Associate Chief Medical Information Officer at Brigham and Women's, focused on digital innovation. I run a group within the organization called the Digital Innovation Hub. And our charge is really to focus on emerging technologies and support digital health throughout the organization. So for the past year and a half, we've really kind of gone a deep dive into XR. And I'm not an expert. I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm learning as we go. But what we wanted to do was really understand, how do we become a subject matter expert within these new emerging technologies in a repeatable framework? And, I'm a physician by training, so we think about this concept when we learn like a new procedure, like a colonoscopy or a central line. It's kind of an antiquated thing, but it's called see one, do one, teach one. And we're using that as kind of the framework that we're doing for this new SME kind of process. So we had a see phase, a do phase, and a teach phase. So for the past year, we've been focused on XR. And in the beginning, we did see, which was really understanding, well, what is kind of the external landscape and who are the players? And that's actually how I actually met both of you through that process. We also did an internal phase, which was, well, who is actually doing work in XR within MGB? And it turns out, actually, there's quite a few people are, but unsurprisingly, most people were kind of doing it in their own silos. So no one was really talking with one another. Over the summer, we really transitioned to a do phase, which was really creating that internal community at MGB for XR. And we call it XR Club, and it's kind of picking up as we go. We've had two events. We do one a month, and we're hoping to make it more public and enhance it as we go. And the hope, eventually, is as we create this real cluster for XR expertise, we're able to engage with the larger industry and the community at large, and ideally help move everything forward, and then get to the teach. So that's what we're trying to do.
Mark, thanks. So one of the issues that comes up all the time, I think, when facilities, hospitals, clinics are looking at new technology, and even if they like it and they like the opportunity, the first thing they're struggling with is, how do we operationalize this? How do we add this to everything else everybody's already doing? Brennan, you've been doing it for a few years. How has that worked out?
Right. So there's several steps to integrating a new service in a hospital, particularly around a novel technology. And it starts with see one, do one, teach one, which again is the mantra that we use in clinical medicine. So we've been spending years now acculturating our doctors and our clinicians and our nurses especially to what virtual reality is, how does it work, series of lectures. I've given medical grand rounds. We have workshops. We've had lots of opportunities to just demonstrate the technology. Plus, we have an accelerator at Cedars. So we've had various companies come through our accelerator, like Applied VR is one, and others that have been able to integrate within the hospital and do pilot programs. So all of that has allowed us to acculturate the staff. Now, almost everyone in the hospital has heard of virtual reality. They may not have had a patient who's used it yet, but they've all seen it, heard about it. I'd say every one of them. And we have about 2,000 doctors in our hospital at 12,000 employees. So at that stage, it's about actually getting the nuts and bolts put together to integrate within a clinical service. And so I mentioned Omer Liran, who runs our inpatient clinical service. We have literally a cart. As I showed the photograph of this, we have programs that we prepare. We have clinical evaluations. We have protocols that we've developed. And we have a way for inpatient clinicians to contact us. It's not yet through the electronic health record, which would be ideal. Right now we have an email. They contact us. We go in. And we do actually write a clinical note and provide information for the team so they're aware. And we've done this, well over 3,000 times, approaching probably 4,000 times now. So we have a lot of experience doing this, but it's still a work in progress, and no one really pays for it yet. So that's a whole other issue, which we could talk about. Yeah.
Was the accelerator a large part of getting VR started and supported, and I guess with the accelerator, there's institutional support for doing that. And so was there more of a top-down approach in moving it forward or started from the bottom up?
So for our accelerator, typically we want some kind of champion within the health system who has an interest in that topic. So I had a pre-existing interest in virtual reality, had met the folks at Applied VR, had an opening in the accelerator. Part of the accelerator process is making sure that there's an interest in the hospital for anyone we bring in. So it's kind of not really a top-down or a bottom-up, but kind of a in-between approach to bring in companies that have products or services, whether it's VR or a digital company or anything, that Cedars Sinai might want to invest in one day and be a part of. So if we're going to create something, we might as well have some part of that. And that's sort of the idea behind the accelerator.
I guess just on that one more, have you seen that working well at other hospital systems that have that similar model? I think NYU Langone has a venture capital.
Yeah, so I haven't seen a lot of other accelerators. I know there are some, and there may be some right here at Mass General, I'm not sure. I think Cleveland Clinic may. It's a little different. We have a venture fund as well. That's separate from the accelerator. The accelerator is a 3-month program. We take about 9 to 10 companies every 9 to 10 months or so. They get a certain amount of money, might be just 120,000 or something in that range. And then Cedars takes a couple points. And then hopefully the goal is that they'll want to invest, or others will want to invest in the product or service that we've co-created in the process of their 3-month sprint through the accelerator. So it's kind of a unique program. There may be others like it. I'm just not as familiar.
Yeah, I think as it pertains to kind of XR and MGB, number one, I'm just going to commend Brennan and Cedars. They're clear leaders in this space, and we have a lot of way to go. We have XR Club. That's what we have right now. So that's where we're at. But I think you have to start somewhere, and you have to have you have to get that groundswell and really kind of grow this out. And our approach has been one where we've just been kind of systematically kind of focusing on this, identifying who the existing kind of champions are within our own organization, and then creating that community around that. I think, part of the work that we do at the iHub, and as my role outside of XR, is thinking about how you actually operationalize, just digital health in general. When we think about kind of the range of emerging technologies that we support, XR and, it's kind of a little bit further in the edge. But, right now we're just trying to just support distributing applications and digital therapeutics in a meaningful way. And I think that road work, that kind of infrastructure, is exactly what we're going to have to do again. When we think about something like XR, where there may be actually equipment that you need to also distribute and you have to figure out those logistics. So there's work to be done. From my perspective, I think a lot of this is about, from where we are, is really thinking about that community aspect and growing it out from there.
Aside from the accelerator programs that you brought in, is there anything that's been completely homegrown that you've been developing?
Yeah, so we are now developing our own software from the ground up. So again, I'll point to Dr. Liran over here, who is not only a psychiatrist, but a full-stack programmer, developer, actually an unbelievable programmer. So we have quite a duo in one person. And so we're able to develop our own software and iteratively test it very quickly. That's one of the advantages we have of doing this within a health system. So we will frequently test out something with patients, and by the afternoon have already changed the software within hours, and have new patients coming in later that afternoon to see if those changes are acceptable. So that's all part of what we call VR1. So there's VR1, VR2, and VR3 studies, just like FDA has 3 phases. MXR has 3 phases, VR1 through 3. And the VR1 study is really the human-centered design process of creating software with the end users, hand in glove, having patients involved, and there's a whole checklist for what those best practices look like, and iteratively enhancing that program so it's acceptable to the end user, in this case a patient. VR2 is an uncontrolled case series of some sort, testing the acceptability, feasibility, looking for side effects, and initial evidence of clinical efficacy, and then improving the program from there if needed. And phase 3 is an actual randomized controlled trial. So we have 3 NIH-sponsored randomized trials right now, and 2 more coming up shortly, with programs that have gotten through that VR1 and VR2 process already. So we kind of focus on all 3 stages and home grow our own software as well.
Can you share what the medical application is?
So right now we're creating a program for irritable bowel syndrome as an example. It's called IBS VR. We have a whole bunch of information on the website. We've published the VR1 trial already that came out earlier this year. And the idea behind that is, I always say, rather than bringing patients to the clinic all the time, with VR we can bring the clinic to the patients. So at home, the patient has access to a headset where they literally have hallways and rooms. It looks like a clinic. It feels like a clinic. But we remotely unlock the treatment rooms over the course of an 8-week treatment program that is all automated and sort of self-managed. So there are fantastical treatment rooms that you have to sort of graduate through easier levels, so to speak, before you get to the point where you are zooming out in outer space and talking to yourself disembodied. Like, you can't do that on day one. It takes a while to get to that point. So that's an example of IBS VR and of a virtual clinic. And we have a number of other programs. Nature VR is another one I showed on the video earlier today. That, by the way, is available. If people in research protocols, IRB protocols, we're happy to make this available without cost for IRB-approved trials. If you want any researchers in here want to look at that stuff. So, anyway.
And Mark, I guess beyond getting XR Club, is there an application that you can talk about that you're looking at?
Yeah, so our internal landscape has revealed at least 30 researchers and groups within MGB that are doing work in XR, whether that's validating outside solutions or creating internal solutions that ultimately could be spun out. And they kind of vary from the spectrum of mental health solutions to creating studies looking at not only just using virtual reality, but adding additional sensory kind of components to that VR experience and seeing if that also affects pain scores in burn therapy, changing dressings and things like that. So, I think when we look at the global community of MGB researchers doing work in XR, it's very exciting. Internally inside of our team, we're about an 8-person shop at the Brigham. So, we're not in the market to make new solutions, but I think we could probably support a couple V1 level kind of things. And we do that with non-XR solutions already. We create web applications within the walls of the Brigham, and also, during COVID, we did a lot of larger scale solutions. Some of the things that we're looking at, which are more lightweight, is actually gaining some competence in using kind of off-the-shelf solutions for, particularly there are some really incredible web-based AR solutions out there where, you can just get a developer to help create some pretty interesting use cases for AR labels in healthcare, where one of the barriers with a lot of AR is the hardware. If you have to have discrete hardware to use, but now with your phones and with, unfortunately, COVID, everyone's familiar with QR codes. That's always been a constant refrain before. It was no one's going to use this because it's a QR code, because no one knows how to do it. Well, now everyone knows how to use QR codes. So we can use kind of this web-based AR technology to scan a QR code and then enable these labels that could have a lot of functionality for medication instruction, or the parts of a central line kit, or other things. So that's kind of the stuff that we're exploring now internally.
So we're down to our last few minutes. Just maybe thinking beyond your own institutions for a second, at an industry level, is the growth, is the development kind of where you expect it to be? It seemed, COVID put a lot of clinical trials on hold, and it seems like there is a lot of stuff in the works right now, a lot of data being collected. But that efficacy does seem to be holding back a lot of applications. Are you satisfied with the hardware that's out there, the options?
Well, this is an issue. I think, is it Jonathan Bush back there? I think about Athena Health and what they did, which is, I'm going to bring two industries together for a second. So something like Epic, I have an instance of Epic sitting at Cedars Sinai, another instance of Epic here at Mass General. They're not talking to each other. There's no cloud. So the equivalent here, like with Athena, if there's some app that a pulmonologist wants to use, it could be a completely different experience than what a neonatologist or a gastroenterologist needs. They need to tailor that electronic health record to look and feel in a way that's useful to them and their patients. Right now, what we have to do is, with virtual reality, somebody has to buy a headset with a kiosk program on it, sometimes $1,000 headset, and then we ship it to them and they get that program on that headset. That's totally not unscalable. It's ridiculous. It's like have to buy a new smartphone every time I want to download a new app. I'd have 150 smartphones all around me. So we need a headset or headsets. We need HIPAA compliant libraries where I could, as a physician, prescribe an app, an XR app, that is going to be downloaded to that patient's headset so they don't have to buy a new headset every time I want to prescribe a new therapeutic. There are many companies thinking about this. This has to be solved, 100% has to be solved. This is the most important problem as I see it in terms of implementation of MXR. Now, we're going to hear from Apple soon. There's going to be a headset. It's going to probably be an interesting and different headset and highly scalable headset, and we're going to have a new player that's going to completely disrupt not just MXR, but all of XR. And we're going to have to see what the opportunities are there to start scaling MXR within some corner of this potentially dystopian metaverse that's evolving, what Daniel Kraft likes to call the med-averse, the MED-averse. So I want to credit him for that.
So I totally agree. And in fact, I think with the looming Apple kind of announcement, that'll be another validator, I think, about this whole industry as a whole. I would also extend that just to digital health as a whole. A lot of these standards, how do we actually distribute these solutions in a seamless, workflow compliant way is incredibly important. And, I think about, I use this analogy a lot, or maybe, I'm not sure if it's actually an analogy, but it's almost like you have these incredible skyscrapers that are fully fleshed out and really beautiful. But then if you take a look back and you realize that the roads and the sewers actually don't connect. And we need to be able to get to a place where the roads and all the pipes connect so that the skyscrapers can actually work. And I think to a lesser degree, that's where we are with digital health, and to a much greater degree, I think, where we are with XR. But I think it's an incredibly exciting field, and I'm pretty convinced in the last year and a half, personally, I think this is the next paradigm of compute, just in general. And if we take that as a truth, then clearly it's going to affect medicine and healthcare. And we have to be in a position to have a take, or else someone will give us the take. And I want to have a take.
Okay, so last question. Mark, we'll start with you. Outside the areas maybe you're working on in XR Club, is there an area of healthcare application with VR that you're very excited about?
So I would say, umbrella-wise, XR, I think the dream for me as a clinician is how can these tools not only help the patient, but also the provider or the clinician. To me, the dream use case for XR is when you come into that room, and Brennan, you were talking about this in your talk, using VR to make a hospital room more palatable. Well, what if you actually had persistent, this is another metaverse take, but when you have a persistent digital layer on top of your physical space, like a hospital room, all the implications of that are pretty astounding. You could have context as the clinician walks in. If the patients and the family have some device, whether it's their phone, their tablet, or some wearable, they could actually have context about who that person is and why they're there. And as a clinician, you could have essentially an instance of the notes and what's happened and what the vitals and things are. And that's, to me, incredibly compelling, and that's the future I want to push forward.
Last word.
The human brain is the most complicated object in the known universe. We haven't hacked it. We're not going to hack it in our lifetime. I don't think so.
Elon Musk, no?
No, and Neuralink either. Amazing stuff. I love it. But what I'm saying here is that no matter how good the technology gets, our brain gets used to it. And my sense is there's going to be a race to the top that we're never going to get above. We're not going to get beyond our brain's capacity to cogitate, okay? So with that, and I have 15 seconds left, the goal for me in virtual reality is not to live in some other reality. We all live in virtual reality every moment of our lives. You are all living in virtual reality right now, okay? You're thinking things in your head none of us can hear. You're remembering things none of us know about. You're singing songs in your head that none of us can have heard before. Okay, that's part of the human experience, is to live in virtual reality. The issue is when some people are sick, when some people are vulnerable, they don't have access to that capacity. They've lost the ability to imagine when they need it the most. And that's what virtual reality does, in my opinion. That's what it does, is it gives people the ability to re-access their supernatural capability. It's supernatural because it's natural, but it's supernatural because they forgot that they had access to it, or didn't know that you had access to it in the first place. And so you can live a richer, real reality, to live in RR, not in VR. And that's what medical extended reality, as far as I'm concerned, is all about.
All right. Nice job. Thank you.
Thank you all.